Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, welcome to another edition of Here We Go Cleveland. I'm the host, Bill Hebel. I'm here with my good friend, again, Michael Zappa.
What's up?
How's the week been? How's the week in Cleveland been?
Not too bad. A lot of excitement on one side, being the Cleveland Indians, and on the other side, not so much after kind of a disheartening appearance or performance by the Cleveland Browns this past weekend. But hey, we're a young team. I think if there's one thing Cleveland fans are, it's devoted and optimistic. So there were some things that I think we can grow from. And hey, look, Baltimore is a good team, and probably two of the best teams we'll see all year we faced in week 1 and 2. So
yeah, seriously. I mean, Baltimore has, they haven't had the toughest competition these first 2 weeks, but they've also played the best defense since like the early 90s, stat-wise and efficiency-wise, in the entire NFL over the first 2 weeks. So although they've seen some shaky opponents, they have performed really well defensively. But before we get into the Browns, like you said, we had some good times in Cleveland with the Indians recently, and look at here they are again on another win streak. They beat the Angels last night, so they're another win streak. They're at 3 games, and we have many more win streaks in the Cleveland area. The Indians just wrapped up the 22-game win streak. Joe Thomas had his 10,000-plus snap streak and has continued to go, which I forget when the NFL started keeping track of snap counts, but it's the longest like history in history. And
yeah.
So what do you think? So let's do a little debate here. We've got the Indians' 22-game win streak, Joe Thomas's streak, and the Cavs 4 years in a row of Kevin Love trade rumors. What do you think is like the greatest streak that Cleveland has going right now?
I mean, I think you have to go with the Indians. I think it's been the most exciting. Joe Thomas obviously is a staple in the last 15 years of Cleveland sports, but in 10,000, I can't think of anything that I've done 10,000 times besides maybe open a car door or something like that. But I think you have to go with the Indians just because looking back within the last 100 years, it's only been truly it's only been done one time.
The time they did it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I know there's an unbeaten streak of 26 games, as we discussed on last week's pod, by the, I think, 1916 New York Giants baseball team, but
yeah.
I don't count that as a win streak. So anyway, I think you have to, in my opinion, you have to go with the Indians because, I mean, I think there are a few players in the NFL that I think have a chance to get to 10,000. I think like Eli Manning is around 8,000. He's never missed a snap, I don't think. You have to double check me on that, but there are a few players that, and I don't think they've been keeping track. I don't want to discredit it whatsoever.
No, right.
But if I have to choose one, I have to go with the Indians just because they've been keeping baseball stats for probably over 125 years, and truly a 22-game win streak has only happened one time. So what about you?
I mean, yeah, I actually think, I mean, the streak that I'm surprised has gone on the longest is actually the Kevin Love streak. I just can't believe that there continues to be rumors. I mean, I know it's not the longest one, and I may be like off the chain and going with that streak as my top streak right now, but I just can't believe that they continue to. I don't even know if there are trade rumors around him, but his name is constantly floated by the media as being involved in possible trades, and that just like that's not good for anyone on the team, anyone outside the team. That's to me, that's the one that I just can't believe is still going on. Joe
Yeah.
Thomas, his streak is really impressive. Like we've said, don't know exactly when the NFL started keeping a snap count, but I was listening to an interview of him, and they were asking him about what the worst injury he had during that streak was. And it actually, during the last, I forget what, it was a few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, during the last game of the season, he tore his LCL in like the first quarter and just continued to play with it. And any other person, or at least anyone that I would think played in the NFL would be like, okay, end of season, I'm shutting it down. He just went ahead, that's just who Joe Thomas is, and continued to play through that game to, lucky it was the last game of the season. But
as much as it pains me to say, I think it's even more impressive that he did it on a team that is historically bad over the last 15 years.
Right.
I think you think about, things hurt worse when you're losing, right? So think about how easy it would be through the course of 14 out of the 15 of the last seasons being sub 500 to just kind of call it in and say, I just don't feel like being in there. Because
right.
I'm sure there were opportunities for him to come out. And so it's a testament to Joe Thomas. I mean, they had everyone you talk to just says how great a guy he is to have in the locker room, be around. And I think we're fortunate to have him. I hope that he's there in one fashion, to either whether it be with it still on the team or somewhere in the front office when Cleveland eventually turns it around, because it's unheard of.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the number of guys that have, that he's played alongside. How many other, all the other Cleveland players have been injured, or every other Cleveland player has either been injured or burned out within a couple of years since he has been on the team. I mean, the only person who lasted as long as Joe Thomas did or has on the Browns is Phil Dawson. And he's gone now, but he was the only other guy that was like a staple year in and year out. So it really is impressive that, like you said, especially on a tough team in it's not a climate that attracts players that they can play in good conditions all year round. It's been tough in the winter for him especially. I know he has been taking Wednesday off practices recently as a DNP, but in my mind, it's listed as a knee, but in my mind, that's just listed as I'm in my 11th year and I'm taking this off, and you guys are putting an injury for me, and I'm going to take every day off.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. It's like in training camp, they call it a scheduled day off. In the season, they just put it a DNP, because I think you have to put something on the injury report.
Right,
So anyway, with that, Bill, I think we have a special guest.
Yeah, we've got a special. Yes. Don't know if it's going to be a recurring segment or not. We may come up with a official name for it, or him, I guess, with the it being a segment. But let's bring on another Cleveland Browns head, another guy from the same town we grew up in, and he's got some insight, or I guess the same insight we have, but a different opinion on how the Browns are going to shake out for Week 3. So let's bring on our good friend Owen Niese.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up, Owen?
Hey guys, long-time fan, first-time caller. Thanks for letting me on the show. Thanks for letting me on the show, yeah.
It's been around for a while.
Just give a quick shout-out to our literally half a dozen listeners. I'm sure they'll all be excited to get your insight from a different point of view than Bill and I have the last few weeks. So I know this will be something exciting for us to debate and something that I'm sure Owen will have some interest in. But before we hop into a Browns preview or any football talk, with the Indian streak, obviously, even though baseball is a superstitious sport, I think it's a good time to say that it's World Series or bust, obviously, at this point. I mean, I think after the streak we've been on, after the performance in the playoffs last year, almost winning the World Series, losing Game 7, I think it's absolutely World Series or bust. So we talked about this a little earlier in the week, but I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on as far as playoffs as we've beat in a potential World Series if we make it there, and why. So I'll leave it to you guys, and I'll save my thoughts for last.
Yeah, let's let our Owen, our new first time caller, give his thoughts first.
Yeah, so it'd be sweet to get revenge on the Cubs. That I think that's obvious, but I look at the Dodgers being the best team in baseball right now, and I think I'd like to take them. I'd like to beat them in 5 games. That'd be it for me. That's just you beat the best team in 5 games is a pretty easy win, and that's what I'd take.
Would you predict that we're going to catch the Dodgers for the overall best record in baseball?
We've come so far. I think we're only 2 games back as of games last night. It would be on Tuesday night after we beat the Angels. What do you think, Owen?
No, I don't think we catch him. I think it's close, but I don't think we catch him.
Yeah, it's so hard to tell because the Dodgers can turn on. They could win the rest of the games this season. I actually do think we catch them and maybe tie them. I do see a couple. I think they still have a series against Arizona.
Yeah, they're tough
coming
to beat.
up, and
sure.
Arizona has
Arizona's good.
Played really well against the Dodgers. Because I think so far the Dodgers have only clinched a playoff berth. They haven't even clinched their division yet, which still is. There's 10 days left of games, but I do think that the Indians catch them. I don't know who holds tiebreaker because I don't.
Well, I mean, but the Dodgers have a magic number of 2 on Arizona right now. So by tomorrow morning when we wake up, this could all be null, and that's. I just really think the Dodgers are going to get the best record in the league. I mean, they've been hot really all season, whereas the Indians have only been hot since, let's say late July, after they were on after the All-Star break, after they got that first West Coast trip out of them, they've been good. But the Dodgers have just been good all year, and it speaks a lot about the team they built, and I think that it'll continue on into the playoffs and into the World Series is my
Didn't they go on like an 11-game losing streak within like the last month and a half?
Yeah, they just recently did. You're right.
Yeah, they did. That was after going like 56-11 the previous 2 months or something like that. So, I mean, a lot of like baseball stats and nerds, when they look at when win streaks happen and when a lot of winning happens, it actually doesn't, winning games in September and late August like the Indians have done doesn't actually correlate to a lot of postseason success. If you look at the history of baseball, overall win records do, which is why you can't really argue that the Dodgers are bad after their 11-game win streak, because they still have, even after that, they still have the best record in baseball by 2 games. So I want to get into another topic here real quick. While we're still on the Indians and Dodgers, both teams have a Cy Young candidate that missed portions of the season, that being Clayton Kershaw on the Dodgers and our Corey Kluber on the Indians. Seems like Kluber has really, really closed the gap here recently. I think the last time I looked, he was only within, this was before his start a couple days ago, he was within 9 innings of Chris Sale. I think at this point it's a toss up. I mean, maybe people go Chris Sale because he has maybe a better story this season. But I just want to get your guys' thoughts. I mean, he just he came from the White Sox. They've been losing. He's finally on a winning team. He's finally playing like better competition because he's pitching against other teams' number ones. So he's finally had, I guess, his like chance to shine on a good team. He's more noticeable. I guess that's his story now. But I don't know if you guys have any different thoughts. I mean, I think. Well, go ahead.
I mean, my thought is, and it's probably a disservice to Chris Sale, but the only time I see Chris Sale pitch is when he's pitching against the Indians and he's getting shelled. And for whatever reason, the Indians just tee off on him more times than not. And every time I watch Corey Kluber pitch, it's basically like if we get him 2 or 3 runs, then it's a done deal. So naturally, to no one's surprise, my bias is I don't see how you give the AL Cy Young to anyone other than Kluber at this point, unless something changes in the next 2 weeks where Corey Kluber goes out and has a terrible outing. I get that he's a little bit disadvantaged because he had a month off. So his overall season numbers may be a bit skewed compared to Chris Sale's. But, I mean, obviously I watch more Corey Kluber than I do Chris Sale, but I don't think you can pick out a team that Corey Kluber faces and say they have his number, that he doesn't put you in the best position to win. I think if you polled the majority of the MLB and said, who would you want in a Game 7 as your starter, fresh, I think the majority of those people will tell you it's going to be Corey Kluber. I really do.
I mean, now that Cleveland is America's team, I mean, definitely that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
well, what I find crazy is so Kluber has 17 wins. He's 17-4. And you look at the NL, and there are 3 pitchers in the National League that have 17 wins. And, I mean, and all these guys, I mean, Kershaw's got a 2.26 ERA, Zach Greinke 2.87 ERA, and this Davis kid from the Brewers has a 3.89 ERA. I mean, that's wild. There's 3 guys in the NL that I think it's a better argument between those 3 guys than what there is between Kluber and Sale. I mean, I'm going Kluber right away. And even Trevor Bauer, I mean, his ERA is not good, not there, but he's put up 16 wins. I mean, that's second best in the AL. I mean, tied with Drew Pomeranz and Chris Sale. But, I mean, Carrasco's got 16 wins too. So you're to be honest, I mean, it's a close race on both sides. But again, I got to go with Kluber, and you can argue out the NL between Greinke and Kershaw but those guys have been doing it forever, and they're both great too.
Yeah, I can't believe those guys were on the same team at one point, Greinke and Kershaw. But that being said, Dodgers still have Rich Hill and their entire bullpen and pitching lineup is crazy. I think if Kershaw gets to 20 wins, he probably gets it. I think he has 3 starts left. I think Kluber can get to 20 wins, but I feel that Francona may not start him the last game to get him in position to rest up for Game 1 of whatever series they'll be in. So,
yeah. How about this? I want to hear your guys' take. Who do you want in that first series? It looks like now it's going to come down between probably Minnesota and New York. Who do you want in that opening series?
Give me New York.
Yeah.
Give me for 2 reasons. One, I think they're an incredibly young team, and they're going to make some mistakes. They're not this veteran team that has shelled out way too much money on proven players. They're relatively young. And for number 2, I'm just sick and tired of seeing New York win anything. So it would be nice to – they stopped our run. They've stopped our run before, and they've had their share of winning. So it's a personal thing for me. Definitely New York. Minnesota, I kind of like what they've done. So I don't want to. I mean, I'll still beat them if we have to, but I would rather see them knock New York out for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with Michael. Just looking at matchup wise, I mean, I think they're playing each other right now. But New York, I mean, they're both. I would looking at all three aspects: hitting, pitching, defense. I would take our pitchers over their pitchers any day of the week. I'd take our batting over their batting any day of the week. I mean, Judge, he's had some power as of lately, and he hasn't hit as bad as he was in earlier September and after the All-Star break, but he's not done well. Their only really good hitter right now is Gigi Gregorius. He's hitting I think he's over 300, like 320 or something like that for the year. So he's just a stud, but that's the only guy.
Well, you got Gary Sanchez, who he's having a career year also. But you look at the history we have against the Twins, and I think that we know each other well, and I think that plays in the favor of the Indians. New York, they have an incredible bullpen, and they got a couple guys that can hit the long ball. I think if it's me, I'll take Minnesota. I think we know them well, and I think I'd take them. Definitely.
Yeah, and in all honesty, it's theoretically still possible that the Yankees catch Boston. I don't know who they play yet, if they play each other still, but they're only 3 or so games back right now, so they could theoretically, still catch them
and theoretically too. I mean, the Twins might not be in it either because the Angels are only 1 game back of the Twins, and even though I'm thinking the Angels are going to lose tonight, but that'd be 1.5 after this evening. But
I don't think they stand good chances playing trying to play the Indians to get into a playoff spot.
But and you have Texas and Seattle at 3 and 3.5 back. I think maybe by the time you get to Kansas City, Tampa Bay being 4 and 4.5 back, that's too far out. But I wouldn't rule out Seattle, although they have a losing record, as do the Rangers. But this conversation might be null because who knows who might catch.
Well, one conversation that will not be null is, and I'm going to write it down, is I just want to get all of your call on how many losses the Indians have this postseason.
That's a tough one. I mean,
without doing the math in your head,
I'll do 4.
Damn it. I was going to take 4, but I'll say because
I think 6. I think 6 is good. I see them. I don't see them really losing a game in the. I see them losing 1 game in the DS. I see them losing I guess
it's got to be 2.
Be 2 in the CS, and then 3 in the World Series. If they play the Cubs again, and the Cubs are starting to get hot right at this time, it could be another thriller.
Someone once told me that late September success doesn't correlate to postseason success, though. So
yes, but getting hot. And win streaks don't matter, but getting hot in September matters, which the Indians are continuing to do.
You went 6, Owen went 4, so I'll pick right in the middle and be the dickhead, and I'll pick 5 because I was going towards 4, but I think 5 is probably more realistic. So let's just keep that in mind as October comes to us, and hopefully we're all right. I mean, they could have 3 losses and be bounced. So
that could happen. That would be a perfect Cleveland thing to do.
Good point. Yep.
One thing we don't really have to argue on is the losses that the Browns have this season, because we know that'll be at least in the double digits. So let's bring on the true subject of this podcast. The main reason we brought big time Owen on is to talk about the Browns. Just looking at some wide receiver production, some players to watch. We're going to have our picks at the end. let's just get into it. Michael and I talked about before the Joe Thomas streak, which is just completely insane. How long that's been going on, and he really, he may be, maybe it's biased because the times that I've watched, or I guess the Browns that I've seen in my lifetime, but I see him as the greatest Brown ever. He's getting close to beating Jim Brown for the greatest Brown ever, just because of the length of his career and what he does for Cleveland.
Bill, I think you just ruffled the feathers of all 6 of our listeners. I really do. And as one of our 6 listeners, you ruffled my feathers. I love Joe Thomas as much as the next guy, but to put him at Jim Brown status, that's a bold move. I'm not necessarily saying I wholeheartedly disagree.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that's a bold move to put him in that class because he is arguably the greatest player of all time.
And keep this in mind that the Browns have not had a lot of recent success, but they do 17 guys in Canton in the Pro Bowl. So there's been a lot of good Browns players over the years. And I think we're at the disadvantage of our generation's just never seen a decent Browns team. And, so
or really
we're
a
going to
decent
pick
Browns player, like
Joe
Thomas is
right.
literally the only. I mean, in our lifetime, Joe Thomas is the only perennial All-Star or Pro Bowler that we have ever seen. I mean, I would say that since '99, we haven't seen another Browns player make more than 4 Pro Bowls. I'll just say that. I'm sure there's been a couple that made 2 or 3, but which is crazy. So I think that might inflate our appreciation. Well, I won't say that because
and I mean I started my Joe Thomas I guess worship by kind of stating that like it makes him it balloons his career because he's played in such a bad Browns era. But yeah, I can't really think of. I mean, there's been tiny flashes of other good players, but most of those haven't even lasted like more than a season. Derek Anderson had that one Pro Bowl year where the Browns went 10-6, and that was his only flash. It was like gone after that. I can't even really think of another like really good.
Phil Dawson.
But
that's about as close as it comes.
That's 3. I wouldn't even throw Derek Anderson in the conversation then, but Phil Dawson and Joe Thomas. Those are the only 2 guys over the last since the Browns came back that have really been household names.
Let's put it this way: in 15 years from now, when we're recording our 800th podcast or something like that, I don't know. 1 a week times 10 years would be how many?
Times 52 weeks a year.
500, yeah.
520.
All right, so
520 gets you 10 years.
When we're recording our 520th podcast, who do we think on today's roster is going to be the guy who has the perennial Pro Bowlers? Because I think there's definitely probably 5 guys that you can look at on our team today and say these guys have a real shot at being staples of the Browns for the next 10 years. I think it starts with Corey Coleman. Oh wait, no, it doesn't start with Corey Coleman. So
it doesn't start with any wide receiver. That's for sure.
We'll take a year from Corey Coleman when he doesn't break one of his hands to start, and then we'll talk about Pro Bowl. But no, so I think I just want to kind of dive into the Baltimore game a little bit. So Bill, we kind of previewed it. I think we both took the Browns to cover the spread, which was 9.
I believe so. It was I think it may have jumped to 7.5 right before the game, but yeah.
And it wasn't close, so obviously they ended up losing by 14. But being the optimist, I mean, if you think about it, we had 5 turnovers, they had 2, so the turnover differential was +3 in their favor. I mean, the fact and I hate saying this, but the fact that we only lost by 14, I think is a testament to our defense. I really do.
Yeah.
Because our defense, despite giving up more rushing yards than week 1 to Le'Veon Bell, I mean, that game could have easily been 35-10, 42-10, because Baltimore had every opportunity to put the dagger in. And I was, as much as it pained me to watch the offense as a whole, I thought the defense held its own, considering it was probably on the field for so often.
Yeah, 70% of the time. I really feel,
Right.
I feel that the secondary has really been helped by the leadership of Jason McCourty. He stepped up into a role this year that the Browns have really appreciated, especially because they're really, really young back there in the secondary. I mean, they're really young everywhere, but they're really, really young in that secondary. And I think Jason McCourty has really taken a huge leap this year in being a leader for that team back there. And it's kind of different because, Greg Williams has him playing the punt return defense with Jabril Peppers back there like 30 yards back behind the line of scrimmage. But other than that ridiculous tipped Antonio Brown play for like 50 yards, they really haven't given up those 20, 30-yard passes that sometimes the Browns seem to give up.
Yeah, I guess because that baffles me, but I guess it comes down to pick your poison, because I feel like the tight ends and like the 10 to 15-yard route with our defense, with Jabril Peppers playing that far deep, has always been there. Like, you watch replays of big gains, and it's like Benjamin Watson, of all people, destroyed us last weekend. And it's just because there's at least a 15 to 20-yard gap between the linebacker and the safety. So I don't know if Jabril Peppers were playing closer to the linebackers or closer to the line of scrimmage, if we would be getting burned for 50 and 60-yard pass plays. So, and then we'd be complaining about that. But, man, you would think you would give them a shot at playing a little closer and say, hey, test us deep. If they start burning us, then we'll back them up a little bit. But, man, it's just like there's nothing worse than having 3rd and long and then just having a guy like Joe Flacco dunk it over the middle to Ben Watson for 12 yards. So, I don't know. We'll see how that develops. But, like I said, I was disappointed in the game on the offensive side, but I thought the defense gave us a few opportunities to get back in the game, and we weren't able to capitalize.
Yeah.
So, Owen,
any thoughts, Owen?
Yeah, to be honest, my thing is, and I was looking over the schedule, and you have your guys' players to watch, and I thought about who my offensive player to watch would be. And I don't want to pick one. I think until the offensive line can figure out how to run block, there's going to be no offense, because our receivers, they're not at that level yet, and Kaiser's young yet, and you have a great running back, and you really have an expensive offensive line, but they've got to learn how to run block, And once they learn how to run block, then we can pick a stud on the offense. We can pick who we think's who's going to have a breakout year at the receiver position with this group of no-name guys we have. And I think that's my biggest beef right now is we have 2 pretty good running backs and an expensive line, and we can't get the run game going, and it's too bad.
Did you see
the whole team struggles because of it?
We re-signed your boy Jordan Leslie to the practice squad.
Yeah, I am excited about that.
Hopefully he gets elevated to the active roster for Sunday, but we'll see. And look, the thing, I get your point about the offensive line. Obviously, we spent a lot of money there. It theoretically should be one of our strengths, but I think there's 2 things that play in there. One being the fact that they've only played together for 2 weeks because Bitonio was hurt in the preseason. Joe Thomas didn't play a snap, I don't think, in the preseason, maybe a little bit in that final fourth game. So these last 2 weeks have been the first time that they've actually played together. So I think that will naturally evolve because I think we do have some talent there. But the second thing is, Kaiser plays a lot of the snaps from the shotgun, right? Because that's where he is more comfortable. So that's where Hugh Jackson puts him. And I think it gives him a little more time to read through the defense and stuff like that. Well, if you just think about the way that a running back would run through the line of scrimmage, if you're running downhill from, let's say, 7 yards back and taking a handoff, you're already close to, full speed when you get to the line of scrimmage. And I think that's the type of back that Duke Johnson is. Not Duke Johnson, but Isaiah Crowell. I think he's hit the hole, maybe make one cut. He's a north-south runner. He's not going to dance around on the outside, and he's not going to Le'Veon Bell the situation and just kind of be patient and wait to make a bunch of shifty moves. I think he is get through the hole, make one guy miss, and then he could be off to the races. So I think that's really putting our running game at a disadvantage right now for him taking a handoff from the shotgun.
Well, and whatever, so he can be at full speed at 7 yards. That's saying that your offensive line holds their own. We're getting backed up. So what if the offensive line is only 4 or 5 yards deep from where Isaiah or where Duke started at? You're only at half speed at 4 yards, basically, and that's not helping.
Yeah, I mean to rebuttal your point a little bit, Owen. I mean looking at if you want to look at some football sabermetrics, the Browns' offensive line actually ranks 7th in stuffed ranking, which basically is the percentage of runs where the running back is tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage. And they're also so that doesn't really happen a lot for the Browns. The running backs, for the most part, make it to the line of scrimmage. It's what they do when they make it to the linebackers and the second levels and open field that they don't perform well. So I think it's not so much on the offensive line. Yeah, but it's a little bit on the running backs too. And I don't know if that second level blocking is probably some tight end stuff. But I think that the offensive line has actually performed. Like if you look at the numbers, they've actually performed really well. If you replace Crowell and Duke Johnson with average NFL running backs, which are probably better than the Browns have, they would probably perform pretty well. And in passing also, the only reason that the Browns, stat-wise, offensive line looks bad in passing is because Kaiser holds the ball way too long. I mean, that's the one thing that kind of makes me shake my head every play at. I see him just holding the ball too long. And I know it's probably better for him to do that than, take an interception. And he's going to learn. He's going to learn that can't happen all the time. But just, you see the Browns start getting into 2nd and 18s, 2nd and 14s, 3rd and 17s, like pretty early in the game, and that's hard to always claw back from those situations.
I've got a fun positive stat for you guys. Just take a guess. How many times do you think the Browns have gone for it on 4th down this year?
5.
I'm gonna say 2 games.
4
times.
They're 4 for 4.
Wow.
They're 4 for 4.
3 for 4.
3 for 4. Okay.
Wow.
I don't know. To me, that shows me that Hugh is getting guys pumped, and when it counts, we're making big plays. Now on 1st and 2nd down, where it's not so urgent, we got to figure out how to, get that 4, 5, 6 yards,
right?
And then our 3rd down conversions can be higher than 5 of 24.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. And looking at
that's tough. Yeah.
Another this may be my Joe Thomas bias pulling through, but another stat I like to look at for the offensive line is from Football Outsiders, they have a power success stat, which basically measures the percentage of runs on third or fourth down that are 2 yards and less that the offense converts to a first down. And the Browns they've converted 100% of those runs that are 3rd and 2 or 4th and 2 or less into first downs. So I really agree with your point that, we have gone for it a lot on 4th down already in the season, and they are good at those small, short runs. It's just breaking into big plays seems to be like a really hard issue, and part of that's the running backs, part of that's the wide receivers. Just, maybe they should all break their hands so we can start like fresh, but I don't know.
Well, and I think another thing which has been a little different from years past is, we've had a couple of tough weeks. Obviously, week 1 was kind of a heartbreaker because I think we had a shot to really make a splash in the NFL for this year, and I think we still will. I really do. And then week 2, it was just like every strength that Baltimore has measured up perfectly with our weakness. So that kind of hurt too. But I think a difference early on that we haven't seen in years past is you can take some positives away from each game. And if we build positives and eventually put it all together, I remember watching game 1 last year of the season when RG3, they played the Eagles, and RG3 was our quarterback, and it was tough to watch in game 1. And I think this year, you look at, we need to improve on the offensive line, but, Kaiser looked good 1 out of 2 games. Andy Dalton has been in the league, 7-8 years, maybe not that much, but 5 years easy. And he threw 4 picks against Baltimore. Baltimore or Cincinnati has way more weapons on offense, and they couldn't score any points.
Definitely.
So you look at that in comparison. We did some good things against Baltimore, and like I said, that game could have gotten blown out of the water very easily, but we kept it within a 2-score game. And I think, you take one of those interceptions away and it's a 1-score game. So, Kaiser threw an interception in the red zone, or in the end zone. And I think we had some drives that we could have capitalized on. So I think that's just a little difference in years past and what I see this year. I know it's tough because you can say, this is just another year and, we're just being optimistic about it. And then not to mention that the touchdown pass was to Njoku, so who's a rookie.
Yeah.
And typically rookie tight ends really struggle to find the end zone and struggle to make a difference. But I think it was great to see him get in the end zone. I think, Rashard Higgins really stepped up. We're very weak, obviously, at wide receiver, but I think baptism by fire will teach anyone a lot.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what is happening with Deshaun Kaiser. So, I put myself in his position, and I hope this is the way that he feels when he gets into the game on Sunday against the Colts. That I've seen Pittsburgh's defense. I've seen Baltimore's defense. I hope the game slows down for him on Sunday because he's like, holy shit, like this is completely different. I don't think it's going to be a world of difference because these guys are still professional athletes. But you just look at that Baltimore secondary and their defensive line, and it's like you've been hearing about these players for most of them for 5+ years of being elite at their positions.
Yeah.
Like Tony Jefferson, Eric Weddle, Terrell Suggs, Jimmy Smith. Those are guys that, you hear just on ESPN, you just hear in the media at being above average and pretty good at their position. So,
and so you touched on the Colts, who the Browns have coming up next, and you touched on a subject that we have touched on, a little bit in this pod before, actually, which is Browns receivers. and you asked this question actually earlier during the week in a group message that we have about who do we think that is going to lead the Browns in receiving yards at the end of this year. And I know at that time you said that you don't even think that person may be on the roster, but I don't know if you still have that feeling now that Lindsey is back.
Active.
He's
I said
back,
active.
Active roster. Okay.
So as of last week, I said that when we were discussing it earlier in the week, I said it because one guy that I'm really excited about is a guy by the name of Kason Williams. We signed him after the roster cut from Seattle, and everyone on Seattle, including Richard Sherman, Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll even said that was the most difficult cut we had to make. And
What's up, Dallas?
And week one, he had Joe Hayden burnt for a 40-yard touchdown, but the ball was just a little out of bounds, so he couldn't connect on it. But I hope that he's promoted this week. That's not my prediction on who's the leading receiver, and actually my leading receiver is a little depressing because it's a tight end, and I think it's going to be Seth Duvall. So that's my bold prediction for the year. It'll be unfortunate, but if he has, he's really impressed me this year so far. But it's very rare that a tight end is your leading receiver. But at this point in the season, that's where I'm at. I mean, he's the only one that in both games has shown that he can get open and get some yak, bro, yards after catch.
Yeah.
So
and
that's mine.
I just want to put this out there before
that the tight end is.
I just want to put this out there before Owen gives his talk. But I was looking at last year's receiving numbers. Terrell Pryor, senior, or I guess he was just Terrell Pryor last year, had 1,007 yards. After that was Gary Barnidge. So a tight end was number 2. And then after Gary Barnidge was Duke Johnson. So the only active player this year that led the Browns basically in receiving yards last year is Duke Johnson. So
running back.
I don't know if that's a feature of the Browns just chucking it up to Pryor, and he got lucky last year, or that's really scares me about how little they actually share the ball and get production out of guys. But go ahead, Owen.
Yeah, well, and again, they say the tight end is the quarterback's best friend. But you look at these guys, and Duvall, he's only has 6 receptions, 103 yards, and his long was 49. So you're saying half his yards came off one play, but there's a lot of these guys are like that. Njoku, most of his yards came off one play. Duke even as well, and if I had to predict, I'd say Duke will probably have the most yards, probably not the most touchdowns, but I would say Duke probably ends up having the most yards on the team.
It is going to be a very sad season if Duke Johnson is the Cleveland Browns' leading receiver. That is going to be very sad.
That is one of the best parts.
Well, it depends on how many yards he has.
Yeah.
He's got freaking 1,200 yards, and I'm not going to be upset, but...
last year, like I said, Terrell Pryor hit the 1,000-yard mark. I don't see anyone hitting 750 this year, unless Kenny Britt goes off or Josh Gordon gets reinstated in Game 6 and he comes back for,
I like looking at forecasts. So forecasts based off performance. So as far as I'm concerned, Rashard Higgins is on pace to have 1,500 yards.
He's going to be a monster if he keeps
healthy. As far as I'm concerned, Seth Duvall is on pace to have 800 yards. So, which is completely unfair in sports, but it's a fun debate to have. I think we'll definitely have a 800 to 900 yard receiver. I'm truthfully, I'm kind of excited to see who develops that way, because ultimately Kaiser is going to get more comfortable. And I think you saw that a little bit this week, that Rashard Higgins was the favorite target of both Kevin Hogan and DeShone Kaiser.
Yeah.
So if that continues, I hope someone picked him up in our league, because that could be a steal.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think he's a steal as long as Kaiser can stay healthy throughout the entire season. And that would be the only asterisk I'd put in there.
Yeah.
All right, Bill. So you're leading receiver for the Browns.
So I think it's going to end up being Njoku. I honestly think he should be the starting tight end. I don't get why he's not. We already have all these other rookies on the team. Go ahead and throw him in there. Get him playing a lot of, tight end streaks, open up the middle of the field. That helps open up the run game and the outside passing game. I'm just a big fan of him. I know he's really athletic. He played basketball. He has a basketball background. Those guys, always good tight ends. Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates. So that's my pick. It's a tight end.
Our leading receiver picks were just 2 tight ends and a running back. So,
well, it's really tough, because we have one rookie receiver, one receiver that in Kason Williams, who I agree he might be good, but and then after that, guys with like 2 years of experience, and that's it. We don't have anybody other than Kenny Britt, who's garbage in my opinion. We talked on Monday. We wish he would be cut. That's the only receiver we have with any experience. So I think it's a wide open race. And I don't think there's a wrong pick at this point.
Honestly,
we're 2 games in and things aren't looking good. So,
if Kenny Britt doesn't show me anything in these next 2 games, which are very winnable games, if he doesn't show me that he can get open and be
three games,
Bengal, yeah.
I'm telling you, I would cut him. And I know, and I am a big advocate for patience with a player, but there's a difference in a player who is not giving the effort, and a player who is giving the effort, he's just not getting open. Like if it was disheartening to watch Kenny Britt play on Sunday to me. And that's the quote leader. That's the veteran. Like, I don't want that guy leading our team. I would rather bring in someone else that has something to prove. But I get the feeling with Kenny Britt that he got his pay. He's got his $10 million guaranteed this year, got his contract, and now he's coasting a little bit. It's really concerning, because I was basically planning on him being a 1,000-yard receiver.
Yeah, and I think some people, if you look at some preseason fantasy projections and even some prop bets and stuff, he had similar odds to other NFL, wide receiver number 2s or maybe even some lower level number 1s to have a 1,000-yard season. And that, looking at how much the Browns were probably going to throw the ball being behind in games, it didn't seem that hard to believe that a veteran receiver like him, who's still fast and big and strong, can have that 1,000-yard season. But after watching these 2 weeks, it just, where is his head? Where's his head at? Like, what's he thinking right now? Is he thinking like, God, I can't? Seems like he's already thinking that he can't wait for the season to be over.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
I don't know if I look down I see on the NFL wide receiver free agent list. I see Greg Little's name on there, and
Victor Cruz.
We got Miles Austin. These are guys we've already tried before, and they didn't work out.
There's one thing you can depend on Greg Little for: being down 35 points and getting a first down and making the first down signal.
It's just crazy that these receivers that we had in the past that were supposed to be big time guys are garbage now even, and let's hope that Kenny Britt's name is on this list here in a couple weeks, and that we go forth with these young guys and just say, look, hey, you don't have to make every catch. You're not going to be targeted every time, but show us some effort. And in 2 or 3 years, we could have a decent core. Who knows?
How do you guys? So we've talked about the running back. Obviously, there's a lot more concerns on offense than there
Brian
are
Hartline.
on defense. Yeah.
Wait, I want to throw this stat out there before we get too far. So I was looking at some efficiency stats and receiving, and this hits close to home, but you guys would not believe who is right under Kenny Britt in efficiency stats for wide receivers.
Braylon Edwards.
It is none other than Braxton Miller. He is only one spot above Braxton Miller in the entire NFL for players with like more than 3 catches in efficiency and yards. He has like 5 catches for 15 yards. Kenny Britt does in 2 games. It just puts it really into perspective how terribly inefficient he's been at the wide receiver position this year.
Why don't we go out and sign Gary Barnidge? He's still a free agent.
Is he really?
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. In 2016 with the Browns, 612 receiving yards.
So anyway, I know there's a lot more concerns with the defense, with the offense than there is the defense. So that's why we've kind of focused on. We've kind of hit all the targets. We focused on offensive line. We've talked about running backs. We've talked about receivers. I think the jury's still out on DeShone Kizer. I think we're getting kind of what we expected. We didn't expect him necessarily with the talent that he has to go out and be a world beater. So I guess the jury's still out there. But what do you think about Hugh Jackson? Do you think he's – I love the guy as a leader. I think he can really inspire players, and I think he's a player's coach, which I think is in today's NFL is what you need. And I think he is kind of the good cop to Greg Williams' bad cop. So I think they're a good tandem. But God, the penalties. I know we have a young team, but that's just something that seems that you should be able to fix. And we just continue to struggle with it. And it's hard enough having an incompetent receiving core and a rookie QB. Then when you're starting on 1st and 20 or 2nd and 20, it's really frustrating. So that's something that I want to see improvement on in the next 3 games, because I think there's certain things that, regardless of your talent level, you can correct. Like, you don't need talent to. Last week, Sammy Coates had a false start. You know how rare it is for a receiver to get a false start in the NFL? That is like, it probably happens a dozen times a year in every game in the NFL. And I know it's rare because I've false started as a wide receiver before, and I got the riot act read to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's something that you can easily control as a head coach that can help your team out so much, and your rookie quarterback. So I just wanted to get your guys' thought on Hugh Jackson as a whole, because I like him, like I said, as a leader, but as a offensive, some things that he does throughout the game just really have me scratching my head.
Yeah, I'll go ahead, Owen. I think, when you look back at when he was an offensive coordinator and the system that he had in Cincinnati, when they were flowing and they had the weapons around them, man, Cincinnati was, a really good offensive team. They were probably picked some years to, go to the AFC Championship game with that offense with AJ Green and Tyler Eifert and Mohamed Sanu and the running backs that they have, and Andy Dalton playing not like a chicken with his head cut off. He seemed, with the right system around him, he seems like a very, very good offensive coordinator. And I think, to his credit, he's being very patient with Kaiser, at least. He's putting the law down on these receivers for dropping balls and not playing hard and anything like that. He's going to put the law down. But I think it's good that he's been really patient with Kaiser, so that when all these guys do develop and they're not so young anymore, 3-4 years down the road, they're really developed, if he's still coaching the Browns at that point, that we're going to look back and be like, wow, we are lucky to have Hugh Jackson as a head coach, because he stuck with us and stuck with our player development for all those years.
Yeah. Me, I'm just going to put it simple. I like him, keep him. I don't want to see any more change. I think what he has going is good, and I don't really want to rebuild again. I think he's got it figured out. It's just going to take time, to get enough of the right guys in to have a winning team.
All right, so
it's as simple as that.
Yeah. I think you hit some good points there. So let's kind of wrap this up. We're about hitting the hour mark on the podcast, and I feel that our half a dozen people that have listened to the beginning have dwindled down to us three at this point in the podcast. So let's wrap it up with give me your player to watch and your pick for this week. Browns are favored 1.5 points at the Colts. So go ahead and give me a player to watch and your pick against that spread.
I'll go first. My player to watch, I'll give you two, because obviously Kason Williams has to be active on the active roster this week, but I think he will be. So I'm gonna watch him. But someone I know that'll be on the active roster this week that I'm again excited to watch play, I'd say, is David Njoku. So he has something to build on. I think, Bill, to your point earlier, he has all the offensive athletic traits that you need. I think the reason he's not getting as much playing time as he should is he probably lacks a little bit at the run blocking position. But in terms of athletic ability to get open and make contested catches, I'm excited. I think that him and Deshaun Kaiser could find a nice little consistent relationship there. So I'll watch Njoku unless Kason Williams is there. And if Kason Williams is on the active roster, I'm calling for him to be the leading receiver this weekend. And unfortunately, I'm going to pick the Browns to lose this weekend.
Hot takes.
So I just think that it'll be a close game. I think we lose by probably 3 or less points, but Chuck Pagano's, I think, a good coach. I think the Colts have a decent team, and I think this is going to be a transition game from the elite to figuring out how they can play with other teams in the NFL. So that's my two bits.
Yeah, I'm my player to watch. I think, and this is going to be a guy I watch every week, is going to have to go with Jabril Peppers. Watch him on defense.
Yeah.
He can bring the hit stick, and you get to watch him on special teams. I mean, he's going to get the opportunities to return enough punts with a good defense and return enough kicks with a bad defense. So you're going to see this guy a lot, and I think he's going to impress you somewhere, whether it's defense or special teams. So that's my guy. And my pick, I'll take the Browns. I think the Browns. I would guess touchdown, 7 points they could win by. I think Jacoby Brissett is starting this week for the Colts, and I think that's a good sign for the Browns. Let's turn them loose. Let's welcome this guy into the league.
Great. So my player to watch, played. It's got to be Derek Kindred playing safety for the Browns. Had some huge tackles last week. I think he ended up with like 3 tackles for loss or something like that against the Ravens. Just making some big plays back there in the secondary. He's just he's one of the guys that before the season you didn't really think about, but he's more exciting as the Brown. I think Greg Williams really helped him out being the defensive coordinator, giving him and Peppers just kind of free reign to really play their hearts out and be good football players. So I go ahead, Michael.
I think if you're done, Bill, I would just say
I haven't gave my pick yet. So
go
let
ahead
me make my pick.
I just wanna, go ahead.
I love that the Browns are favored. It's the first time they've been favored on the road in 3 years.
What's up?
I really think the Browns are going to win this one. I think it's going to be like 10. I think they're going to win in double digits. The Browns the Colts are just bad, and the Browns have struggled through 2 weeks of playoff teams, and I just think that I think the Browns are really going to kind of put their foot, in the turf, and come home from Indy with a W.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'm not there yet. So I've seen a lot of good things, but I have a little bit reluctance to just say I'm there yet. But I think it'd be good if we had a segment about how many losses we think the Indians will have in the playoffs. I think it's fun to week have measurable, wagers that really don't have any bearing on any monetary value or anything like that. So right now we have the win total, the loss total for the Indians in the playoffs. We have the leading receiver, which will be interesting.
Yeah.
The other one that I think would be interesting for this game specifically, being all of the dysfunction within the receiver within the last couple of weeks, is just something to discuss next week. Is who do you guys think the leading receiver will be this weekend? And since I went first on the last one, I'll leave it to you guys to go. Obviously, none of us can pick the same person.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll pick last. It's fine. You two go ahead.
I think Higgins is going to continue to be just a really good target for Kaiser to hit. And I'll keep it simple, and since we're running a little long here, I'll keep it short as that. So Higgins is my guy.
I'll go Kenny Britt, just because I hope that he shows us something of how we could why we signed him to the deal we did, and I'll leave it there.
I'll go with Ricardo Lewis.
Ricardo Lewis, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe kind of a sleeper. Who knows?
All right,
Who knows?
Good stuff.
All right, good stuff, everyone. Yeah.
Well, hey, I appreciate you guys letting me on to guest on the show. I love it. Look forward to listening to the show next week. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. 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 Thanks